Welcome to all of you who were able to make it to our AI Tools for Library Research Work Smart workshop. My name is Christopher Jimenez. I'm an associate librarian, web services librarian as well for the Information and Research Services Department. And I'm joined by my two colleagues who will go ahead and introduce themselves.
Melissa, why don't you go first?
Hi, I'm Melissa Del Castillo. I'm assistant librarian, soon to be associate librarian. Exciting. I'm the virtual learning and outreach librarian at the Green Library.
Congrats, Melissa. Hello, everybody. Good morning. My name is Frank Fajardo, Associate Librarian and Assistant Director of the Medical Library. Thank you all for coming today.
All right, and you will see that we have some extra content linked out here in the lower left-hand corner, library.fiu.edu/AI. It's our big mega guide to artificial intelligence, generative AI, and some of the tools that we use, some of the concepts we have laid out for you there, some of the hands-on, right, kind of things that you can kind of review, videos. It's just a huge resource for the FIU community that you can go ahead and use as needed, maybe integrate it into your classes or into your coursework as you see fit. Now, just real quick, I am really terrible at looking at the chat. So if you post into chat, I'm sure somebody here on this workshop will be reviewing it, and they can interrupt me or interrupt whoever is talking to go ahead and address an issue if any issues come up, if you have any questions. I'm fine with you guys just kind of turning on your mics and saying, hey, Chris, I have a question or, a thought. So by all means, this is a discussion as well as a workshop. We are sharing information, but we're not just, talking down from on high or anything like that. So let's get right into it now. So here we are. We're at the hallowed halls of the library, where knowledge reigns supreme. And when we talk about AI, I'm just going to go ahead and present just a basic framework for considering AI, kind of explain what generative AI is, and kind of set the foundation or lay out the context. After which we'll dive into some of the tools and some of the tricks that you can use to employ AI in your library research. But when I think about the role of AI or the place of AI, I'm always reminded of a story that my colleague tells about a former administrator who came waltzing into the library one day and to a gathering of librarians and addressed us, and this was before my time, so before my time started here, and they said, man, it must be real rough being a librarian now. Hopefully you guys have your CVs and your resumes are all brushed up, because Ask Jeeves is coming around, and we're not going to need librarians anymore, because everybody can just go and ask Jeeves for the answers to their questions, and they'll be done. They'll be all set for life. And I didn't hear any chuckles, but I hope that there are a couple of chuckles, because at this point, when you say Ask Jeeves, it's like, who is Ask Jeeves, right? That prediction didn't exactly come to fruition, although we do have, let's say, Google that has and Wikipedia that has kind of grown up alongside, descended from Ask Jeeves, and is now a major part of our lives. And that's kind of what I'm thinking, or what we consider when we look at generative AI, right? Is that yes, it is disruptive. Yes, it is a causing a bunch of waves, right? It's making a splash. It's impacting our students. It's impacting our way of life, right? But it's not necessarily taking over and knocking down or demolishing our current institutions or our current ways of thinking of things, or our current institutions, right? It is coming alongside. It is augmenting, and it's going to fall into place. And what is that place then becomes the next question, or the major question. So when we talk about what is that place, we have to ask what exactly it is, right? And then when we know what it is, we can then have that next discussion. So when we talk about generative AI, we know that it is a type of artificial intelligence, right? There are many different applications for artificial intelligence. And specifically when we talk about something like ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot now, which we know that the university now has adopted, it is a type of artificial intelligence that understands and generates natural language text, right? So it's ingested a major corpus. I'm sure I'll get into it. Yeah, so how does it work? It's trained on a large amounts of text data. So you have a large language model, right, that takes this data, all these documents, this huge corpus of documentation, and it learns the patterns and it recognizes the structure of language. And then when it knows enough about language in a given topic, it can then generate its own text, right? So you give it a prompt, and the AI knows the subject, goes into the LLM and produces text that's commonly associated with this particular topic, right? So what's behind it? Well, of course, it uses an algorithm called a transformer, right? That's why GPT, right? It's a transformer to learn how to generate text that simulates human conversation, right? This algorithm is based on a neural network, which is a computer program that's designed to mimic the way the human brain works. And I really wanted to kind of dwell on this definition a bit, so that it's not actually thinking, right? It is recognizing patterns, and it is kind of just reflecting what is already in the literature, right? It's not generating anything new per se. It is cobbling things together. So what's it called, right? I've used generative AI. We know ChatGPT, we know Bing AI, we know Microsoft Copilot, right? GPT stands for generative pre-trained transformers, right? And it refers to that type of algorithm that's behind many different services. And you can read them all here: Claude, Llama, Bard, and others. So then, we talk about the context, right? So we've got, our traditions, right? Those hallowed halls of scholarly materials that go through peer review and all that. And then, we've got our former adversary, right? This Wikipedia, this crowdsourced type medium. And then, of course, now our new adversary, or our new, the new kid on the block, really, who is generative AI. And, we're dealing with all these different ways of knowing, right? Different sources of information on a day-to-day basis. And and they fit together in one way or another. So we're going to go ahead and use one of the ACRL frames. That's the framework for information literacy. That's common. It's a standard in library and information science, to kind of see where each of these ways of knowing, right, sources of information might fit in or respond to a given question, right? So if the question is, well, who's authoritative in a given topic, right? The scholarly material might say, well, a small group of experts, right, is who's authoritative, this very small select group. In a crowdsourced situation like a Wikipedia, the authority is this large community discussion, so we can check and balance each other. As as someone puts something on the internet and then someone else says, what, I actually read something that's actually contradicts this, I can go in and edit that. And then another person reviews that, and you have this large community discussion, and we come to a concession that way. With generative AI, basically, it's an immense corpus of documents. So you have this whole history of information, of data, and we're talking about millions of documents, right? That say this is what the source material about this topic says, and that's where you rely on what you rely on for authority. The next question is, what is the scope? What is the scope of the discussion? Well, in a scholarly material, we've got a narrow focus on a specific question, right? Crowdsourced material is broad discussion of a general subject, usually, right? And then with generative AI, we have a wide set of training data. And we're probably going to start seeing a pattern here, right, where generative AI is relying, again, on this huge corpus. And it all depends on how good that corpus of documentation is, right? How does the context presented or dealt with? With the scholarly material, we're talking about literature reviews, we're talking about bibliographies, we're talking about, a very human detailed process, as some of my colleagues here recently was talking about going through and doing that literature review and having to write that. Of course, using generative AI, I'm sure we'll talk about it to kind of help ease the process, but still it's very labor intensive. Crowdsourced material, we've got links to the source material, right? And then, of course, generative AI might ask follow-up questions, right, that can lead to added context. So it's not, generative AI is not incapable of adding context or asking about the context. It's just, it's not going to give you, it's not actually, really thinking. It's just saying, well, there are other questions that other people have written about that are kind of related to this topic. Is this something you want to know about? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Who is the intended audience? Typically, in peer-reviewed materials, it's usually other experts in the field. If it's published in some kind of journal of super specialized something or other, right? It's really you're going to be talking to your other peers, and then it can get interpreted into real world context, right? For crowdsourced material, usually the intended audience is other members of the community, right? Other people who might visit Wikipedia is who you're writing for. And then for generative AI, the intended audience is the user, right? So you have like a user and kind of a systems type of relationship between the generative AI and the person, which will then mean what comes out of it is explicitly tied to what the user puts into it, right? And we'll get into that with the prompt engineering, right? How to get a good answer back from generative AI. How is the authority reinforced? Again, with the scholarly materials, other experts in the field, goes through the peer review process. You get feedback, you incorporate the feedback. Well, you say, hey, this is how I changed it according to the feedback, or my analysis stands because of this, that, or the other thing, right? Crowdsource, again, other members of the community will reinforce the authority or say this is right or wrong. With generative AI, again, you're relying on the large learning model, right? And training documents, right? The LLM and training documents are the king. And sometimes that's, well, in every case, that's kind of a black box. We don't really know what what generative AI is trained on, right? What that corpus looks like, what the bias of that corpus might be, right? We don't actually really know that, which can be kind of scary. So now that we've got kind of a base, we've got the basics, we know what GPT, what generative AI is, how it works, what it is not, how it does not work, right? We can see kind of where it might fit in the in like a scholarly framework or an epistemological framework. Now we need to say, okay, we're going to use our critical thinking skills to place ChatGPT within the research process. And before we get into it, we know that there are two basic research characteristics, right? That it is scaffolded and it is iterative. It's scaffolded in that, I don't know what I don't know, right? So I need to go out and find out those things that I need to find out. So I'm going to start, if I don't know anything about a subject, I'm going to start with the basics. I'm going to go out there and get some that tertiary materials, the reference materials. I'm going to look at a dictionary. I'm going to look at an encyclopedia. This isn't going to get cited in my paper, in my research paper, but I need to know, the key dates, the key names, the key people, right? Usually in our classes, that's presented during the course, right? During the structure of the course, right? To teach students all those basics and get them to the point where they can then start a research project, right? Write a research paper or something like that. And then, as you learn more about your subject, and you can describe what you're looking for better, right? And that brings us to the iterative part, right? So as you get more information about what you're trying to find out, then that information can then inform your search strategy, right? And you're describing this concept better, and you're describing that concept better. You're adding you're using your Boolean operators to create better synonyms and better describe what you want so that your databases can give you a better answer, right? And here's that both scaffolding and the iterative process kind of laid out here in a chart, right? So you got that first level where you're catching up, you're trying to find out, what are other researchers doing? What are the driving questions and issues, and where are the gaps in the research, right? Level two, you're going to clarify, what are the different perspectives? Who are the population groups that are being impacted, right? And again, we're still trying to figure out those problems that need to be solved. And then finally, we got that level three of what contributions you can make, so you're going to start, doing more of the critical examination. You're interpreting the research problem. You're addressing, and potential answers to a given problem. And trying to advance knowledge, right? So when you think about generative AI and the fact that it's based on a corpus, right? It's not really doing any higher critical thinking. Well, you'll know that maybe, generative AI, is not going to be able to, interpret a research problem. But you know what? It might be able to give you some of those level one answers, right? What have people said about a given topic? It's absolutely excels in doing that. It can absolutely tell you what, some of the current findings are, right? It can absolutely give you some of those, things that have been written already, even going into some of those level two clarifying questions. If you ask it specifically, right, what you want, I want to know who is the impacted, by a certain question, right? It can give you some of that. So, as you're thinking about generative AI and where it might fall, what it might be able to do, consider some of these, these level one, level two questions, and then your brains have to, build upon those basics to then get to the level three contributions. And I'm going to go ahead and stop talking and pause for any kind of questions. I see that there's a few items in the chat.
I was just about to say that, Chris. So Dr. Roller from the medical school just said she's having a lot of trouble understanding what the Turnitin AI percentage indicates that so she uses for her assignments in her class.
Yeah, we've had a lot of discussion about the Turnitin AI percentage in the Faculty Senate technology meetings. I will need to take this question back to them, and maybe we should probably do something about that, because I I don't believe that it is great, right? I know yeah, Turnitin claims to have a very high accuracy score. But yeah, it's also another black box, basically, where it's like, we're right, and we're not really going to tell you why we're right, kind of deal. So I believe the actual the advice is to, if you see that high score, to kind of have a discussion with your student, rather than, come down on them with like a penalty. More to have that discussion to say, hey, where did this come from? And, maybe point to a particular citation or a particular argument, and see if they can kind of explain that, because it's not perfect. It really is not. I know that they claim to have that high score, but it can be. And it's also, yeah, as Christine is mentioning, AI detectors are biased against non-native English writers as well.
And I know as this is being put out there in higher education research, there is currently those that are testing it to see what the validity is, because it is fairly new. I know I've used an AI plagiarism checker, and it will sometimes flag things that are not plagiarized. An example is it highlighted like some of the text that was actually in quotes that I was quoting. So I think that as a tool, as with most AI tools and other tools, is, sometimes it does take that secondary look by an actual human, unfortunately, which can make it almost cumbersome to be able to see if it's actually flagging AI generated content or just false negatives, which is what has been brought to light. But it's interesting what the university will come out and say, because I think that there is that demand for some type of AI policy, and this would probably be part of it.
Yeah, and my understanding too is since this technology is advancing so fast, some of these tools are not even catching up. It's incredible. So I'm sure that we'll hear more about this in the coming months and especially this year. Yeah, I see the chat is it's busy. A lot of folks are making comments there. That's good. Thank you very much for that. So let's see about getting back to the presentation and stuff, and we'll have more discussion and more questions, and please feel free, just pop it in the chat and we'll address it later as we go through. So I'm going to discuss a little bit more about the benefits and some of the concerns of AI. And Chris was alluding and talking about like all these different things that, AI does and all these different things. So it's here to stay, folks. As of December of last year, it's changed our life and it's going to continue to change. I could tell you, working in the medical school and the medical library, we've had so many questions about this from faculty and also our med students. There's a lot of information in terms of how it potentially eliminates human error and risk, especially when completing repetitive tasks. And companies like Amazon and Google are getting involved more in medicine because imagine in a couple of years, some of these routine procedures that you go to the doctor for, you might have a machine completing that something in the future. And that's just in medicine and in healthcare. So you can only imagine, but there's so many different aspects. And if we go into the next slide, one of the things that is very useful is that it can help students brainstorm ideas and refine their process. Especially Christine mentioned some of these for non-native speakers, helping them translate information, like from another language in a matter of seconds. And that's very nice that it could do that. But also, I've seen it also like, create an outline for a paper or a manuscript also in a matter of seconds. But it all depends on how good you write that prompt, right? When you go in and you write and do that. It's also a good place to get some information, some light background or basic information, but always check where that information is coming from, especially if there's a reference involved, and I'll talk about that in the next slide a little bit. But, I've seen it too, where it can just give, in terms of brainstorming, some keyword and subject heading ideas. That's nice. And also AI potentially, you're feeding a corpus of documents. Imagining feeding data sets, large data sets and information, and having it analyze it in a matter of nanoseconds. So potentially you're going to see some of that also coming soon. And in fact, I think maybe they're testing that right now. But with the good, there's also some of the bad that we have to consider. So some of the problematic stuff or concerns that we're seeing is that first and foremost, the hallucinations. You might write a prompt and it creates a nice essay, and it's just going to say, oh, a reference would look good here, but that reference does not exist. And I've been on one of these wild goose chase too, where I'm looking for a reference that does not exist, and I spend a good 45 minutes looking for something. And sometimes I get this from faculty or students. So make sure that you double check, and double check. And while it can generate information in seconds, there's also a potential for bias because there's no checks and balances. Okay, it's just putting something together, and you got to see, how was this written? Where's this information coming from? Again, just looking at that. Also, again, with that, citations and plagiarism, copyright information. Who owns the copyright if you create something using AI? There's been a lot of discussion online regarding that. It's incredible. And I could even see the chat also. It's kind of interesting, the comments that people are posting in there too. So there's a lot of ethical concerns regarding that. And a lot of publishers that we work with are all updating their policies regarding any AI generated information. So that's going to continue happening. So again, the myriad of concerns, it's going to keep on popping up, and a lot of information. And also too, how much access are you giving some of these tools? There's a concern for privacy. That's something to consider too. So again, a lot of great benefits too, but with the good, there's the bad. So just caution is what we suggest and we advise when using these tools. But it is here to stay. Oh, and thank you. So Jessica just sent out some great stuff here too, about AI usage and guidelines. So thank you very much for sharing that, Jessica.
I'll probably be adding those to our LibGuide. I'm always looking for good
Thank you.
sources.
And we crowdsource too, folks.
Yes.
Thank you for that, for providing that information.
Hi, I'm Melissa. I'm going to talk a little bit about prompt engineering, but also do some demonstrations on some of the tools that we can recommend. So I'm going to share this clear framework for prompt engineering. This is from the library dean at the University of New Mexico, Dr. Lowe. And he's been writing a lot of really good articles on information literacy and AI. And this was kind of his framework that he's put together for creating these library research type prompts. So of course, the first one is being concise. This is something that we've talked about over and over, like to be able to use the keywords. And this is something that we do as librarians when we create search strings. We're looking for those keywords that will be succinct in finding our research that we're interested in. Also, being logical, and what that means is structuring it, saying write a 5-paragraph essay on, or give me an academic journal title, but being very as the next one is explicit, and letting it know exactly what you want. And I think this is kind of where librarians get a little iffy, because we're so used to creating these search strings, and we put a keyword, we put an and, we put another keyword, and then we put an or in a parentheses or parenthetical. But with these GPT models, it really is about natural language. So you're going to want to just ask it what you want it to do for you. And that is very much in a different thinking than what we're used to when we're doing library research. The next one, the next two kind of go hand in hand, which is being adaptive and reflective. So you ask it to write this paragraph on AI art. You read through it and you say, okay, but make it more academic in tone. Being able to look at what it's generating, think about it, being reflective, and adapt by saying you want to change the tone. Maybe you say, give me more, these aren't adequate. But having that conversation with this GPT model to be able to get what you want out of it, whether that's an outline, keyword generation, creating a title for a paper, also summarizing, but really thinking about these 5 things when you're writing that. And I think the reflective is the most important, because as we all know, when we teach library research, you're not gonna enter in the perfect search strategy the first try, right? It's gonna be about looking at the results and seeing where you could improve on how you ask. And it's the same for these generative chat models, whether it's an AI art app or a text generator. Being able to say, okay, that's good, but how can we make this better? So I think that one becomes the most important, is not taking this final answer as the final answer, but having some type of human input as to how to get that information out. So I think that you can change the slide. Site grant, well, that's another story altogether. You know, we do have a page on our guide about citing AI, and I'll show that to you now because I'm gonna go ahead and do a couple of prompts. So I'm going to share my screen. These are my beautiful Dali paintings of abstract paintings of terrible choices. So it will pretty much generate any kind of information you want from it. And let's see. I have a little Google Doc open just so you can kind of see my workspace. Here's my favorite right now AI tool, which is Quillbot. But I probably have, I think, 3 AIs running. So sometimes they fight. And this is exactly like if you have a couple of different citation generators, like Zotero or EndNote, where they'll all try to vie to give you answers. So just be wary when you're, loading up different AI tools that they might disagree with each other. And I'll show you what it looks like when we do this. So the first thing I'm going to point out is the AI tools page of the LibGuide. This is where I've put all of these different apps, so you don't have to remember the URLs for them. You can come over here and find them. I do want to point out that there is a plagiarism and citation page that has hints at how to cite GPT and MLA and APA, also Chicago. So if you wanted to do a little more in-depth research on that, on how to cite it, you can find those links here. The other thing that I am going to point out is, I'm writing a paper right now and I am using some of these AI generators. So I'm using it in my acknowledgements, which I think is going to be something that is more and more likely to be seen in academic papers. And for that, there is a citation here. Oh, where is it? I think it might be on a different page. Excuse me, sorry. Anyways, I'll find it in a second. But basically, you state the tool you're using, you have a URL for the tool, and what exactly the tool is doing for you. So I use Quillbot for syntax, grammar, and spelling. And I might be using Google Gemini to help generate a title for my paper. I haven't decided yet. So, as we come into contact with these tools and we use them more and more, I think that you'll see them more and more in the acknowledgements of different research papers. So just keep that in mind. So let's start with ChatGPT. I think currently the 3.5 is still sort of free. Cross fingers. 4 is definitely a cost. And it is something that is infinitely better than 3.5 because as we know, these are language learning models, so they do take in information as you interact with them. So that's another part of when you're being reflective and adaptive, you're asking it to do these things. It's taking in all that knowledge from all the users that are interacting with it to make it a better product. And I think that is somewhat helping out with some of the bias. It was before that it was overcorrecting or trying to give responses about being biased, but now it is just, from what I hear, it's no longer, if you ask it a biased question, it will not answer the question. It will just ask you to ask another question. So I think as we interact with it, it is learning from us. So here's my first prompt. I'm going to be writing this paper on AI art. So my prompt is, a title for an academic journal article. And I want an intriguing tone, which is something I've been working with their language, and that was the way that I think is saying that, like, I want something that's interesting. So it's thinking, okay. Oh. And I could just talk to it like it's a friend. Okay, so it's giving me all of these different ones that I could kind of look at and, see if any of them would be appropriate for my paper, because I'm giving it a short-term prompt, but as you can see, it's kind of adding in some elements that may not be relevant to my paper. So it does take that second look with human eyes to say, oh, well, my paper's not about this, so this is something that is not important. So this is just, I can also say, more academic, but have this conversation with to be able to get what I want from it. And I know we've done this for presentation titles, because, at a big conference, having a title that's got a hook, can sometimes be hard when you're so, deep in the research part of it. But ChatGPT does help with that type of thing. So these are this is just one example. Let's move to a different one to see kind of what they do. So I'm going to be using Google Gemini, which I do really like. And I'll show you the reason why. Oops. So here's my prompt, write a paragraph. See, I'm being very explicit. I want one paragraph. My biggest problem with the text that's generated from AI is sometimes I feel like it's too, like, marketing focused, like it's trying to say something is really great. And I think that has to do with the text that it has reaped from the internet, which is mostly businesses that are trying to sell you something. So a lot of the text that gets generated doesn't feel neutral. It feels kind of like it's saying this is the best ever. So that's one thing I do watch out for when I'm using these GPT models. So here I have a pretty good paragraph here. Let's go ahead and steal that paragraph and put it back in my paper. Now, as you can see, let's change. Let's make some mistakes here. You'll see that my Quillbot, which is an AI assistant, is trying to give me pointers on, to help with my grammar or my syntax, changing my AI, and it kind of gives me a little bit of a reason. But as you can see, I'm also able to highlight this text, and then this is my other, let me make this bigger. I'm so sorry, my little screen. This is Google Gemini. It's a extension of Google Gemini, but in Google Docs. So this helped me write, which I'm going to show here too. But I can change the tone, more formal, more casual, summarize bullets. I can make this into bullet points. And it'll go ahead and let me just replace that text. So I did a GPT 3.5 prompt. Let's go ahead and take this, do help me write, and I'm going to change the tone to casual. So maybe I'm writing something for a website, something, that's not necessarily academic in nature. So now it's, as you can see, it made it more conversational. Like, here's a question. This is the tricky part. It's like a little bit more, yeah, casual in tone. And I could tell it, oh, this is a terrible, this is a good. And then this is actually what makes GPTs better, is this interaction that you can have with the text that's generated by telling it that this suggestion is good. And it will, if I were to say this, it will, you know, I think if I say that it's bad, oh no, it used to let me write a little, the reason why. That might be something that's changed. Some of them will let you tell it why it's good and why it's bad. It might be a different function, but I always use this to my advantage so that I can get better results out of it. So, oops. Let's go ahead and just disregard this or replace this text. So now I have this little paragraph that I could use in a LibGuide, or as, you know, a catchy paragraph to describe the presentation that I'm giving in a conference proceeding. So the next one I'm going to show you is Quillbot, which I've kind of shown you here. And as you can see, it's actually telling me, oh, not with, but to. Okay, so thank you for that, Quillbot. I'm going to go to the Quillbot app, online. And this one has, you can copy and paste text and rephrase it. You can also summarize large text. This is great for writing literature reviews and you don't want to read through a whole paper. I have a paper saved here. I'll show you how it works. I'm going to upload. I can either paste the text or I can upload a document. So here I have this article about ChatGPT. Oops, I don't want to paraphrase. I want to summarize, but that paraphrasing is also an option. So I can summarize this article. And let's see, now instead of reading through a bunch of text, I only have a few paragraphs to read through. And then up here, I could tell it, oh, make this even shorter. That's way too much to read. Also, do you see it's pulling out keywords for me? So if this was a paper that I decided to use and I wanted to do a search in the databases, I have keywords that I can use here. And it will make for lighter reading than reading all of these different articles. I can just read the summary of the article to see if it's appropriate. It does have a plagiarism checker, and I have used it. It does cost money, and it will give a score. And I have made some changes because of these scores, so it can help you along in that way also. The next one I'm going to show you is Research Rabbit, and this is a great tool if you are using Zotero especially. So let's go ahead and show it to you. So I've already logged in, it looks like, and I have connected my Zotero account. You don't necessarily have to, but it does make easier work. So here is this collection I have in Zotero all about ChatGPT that we've been doing when we do our Zotero workshops. So as you can see, once I've clicked on this specific collection, I can add papers to this collection with a title, a DOI, a keyword. To be able to add that, I can also upload a whole collection. And then if I choose an article, As you can see, it's going to give me much easier way to do research because I can just quickly look at the abstract. I can click on similar work, and it does this really cool map concept by authors. But now it's giving me these different papers. And the reason why I trust this more than GPT 3.5, ChatGPT, or the others is because this is pulling from the Zotero database, so that of entered bibliographic works. So that means that a researcher who uses Zotero has added these articles, so they're probably not fake. They're most likely real articles. So this is just one, further advance of that initial worrying about how the citations that are being pulled are fake citations. And I really encourage you to kind of play around with this. It's for visual learners like myself. It's a lot of fun to kind of see how these articles are suggested either by the actual work or by the people that have written the article. But yeah, it's a good way to find more articles for your literature review. The last thing I'm going to show you really quickly, because I know we only have like 10 more minutes, is Crayon, which is an art app that I've been using lately because I feel like all the other ones are getting charged. So here, let's do the Golden Panther. So I was doing an FIU, I was doing a presentation with a colleague from a different university, and we both created little avatars. Her avatar was a ram, she's at VCU. And our avatar is, of course, a Golden Panther. I've tried different ways of saying it. And that was the way that I actually got a panther that was not black. Let's see. Oh, it might be a little slow. I'm gonna open up the chat and see if there was any questions. I'm sorry. Oh, it's still creating. But just a warning, as you can see, I mean, from what I've heard, and the reason why a lot of these are these AI art and other generators. Oh, look at him. They're giving me cheetahs. That's not good. I think I like business panther here. It's still weird. It does not know how to draw a tie. I definitely need to work on my prompt to get a better results because these do not look correct. I guess this one's the closest. Oh, anyways. That the servers that are needed for these AI are slowly being used up, and that is the reason why a lot of these GPTs are asking for monies, is because they want more server space so that they could become better applications. So I mean, I'm not excusing them for wanting to charge per image, but that is the reason why. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing and see if there's any questions. Oh, great. Thank you for these different links. I'll definitely be adding them. Oh yeah, DALL-E is great. I tried to use DALL-E the other day and I could only make 2 images before it wanted to charge me. So I was a little disheartened because they're working on DALL-E 3. I think now they're on DALL-E 2. So yeah, it's kind of moving at the speed of light. That's faster than any technology that we've seen thus far. We thought that computers were getting smaller and better, but I think AI is definitely speeded along. Yes, future expenses. I know as a library, we are trying to get a subscription to GPT-4. I don't even want to think about GPT-5. But that is something I think that more and more universities are going to have to incur costs for, are these AI chat text image generators, because as they get better, that's when they start to charge. So if they want students to be able to use AI in a responsible, appropriate way, they will have to eventually, foot some type of bill, just like we have, EndNote, RefWorks, citation managers. I think that more and more universities and libraries are going to have to foot some type of bill for subscriptions to these much improved AI applications, because the difference between one iteration to the next iteration is astounding, with getting rid of problematic issues, creating infrastructure, adding that evaluative method to the way that it works.
So Melissa, there was a question from Dr. Roller here in the chat. She said, are there AI image generators that one can use if you're going to use it in publishing?
The one that I would recommend, because as you could see, the crayon was pretty poor with the pixelation. The Canva, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Canva. It's a really great to use when you're, let me go ahead and just show you. When you're making presentations or posts for social media, and they actually have a text to image generator. I'm probably not going to find it right away. I think I have to go into a project.
I think Jessica just put it in the chat.
Oh, she did? Okay. Great, because yes, sometimes it can be a little hard to maneuver around, and there I thought it was in images, but I might be wrong. I'm sorry. But yes, the tech, they have a text to image, and it is pretty high quality if you wanted to use it in your presentations.
Well, what about if you wanted to use it for publishing? I know for presentations, there's no problem doing, most anything if you're just putting it in your Canvas course.
Oh, yeah, because usually with the images, they want them as separate files. You might have to spring for a pro account to get those higher quality images. That is something I've been asking the university. I know Chris has also, something that we've really wanted to have some type of Canva account, or Canva that can be used, because there are all of these different functionalities that if you don't pay the extra money for, they're really a stopgap, like not going to be able to make you want to use the product without the actual paid for subscription.
No, Frank knows why I'm asking because I've asked him this before, because I have a relative who writes children's books, and he's been paying people to do original drawings for his books. But now with all these these ways of doing it yourself, I was just wondering, because the books are for sale. Right? So in other words, it's not like when we're just incorporating images into our PowerPoints, right? I was just wondering about the legality of creating an image with some of these image makers.
Oh, okay. So that's a different story. It's funny you say that, because this is something that as the art liaison, I speak with the art students about, because they're worried about the other side of it, which is, how can I make a living as an artist if these AI art generators are creating images, with a simple prompt? And then also I have my images on the web are they going to be copyrighted, infringed upon because some AI art generator has taken my style?
Mhm.
So I think that conversation, unfortunately, is just beginning. And as we become more reliant on these AI art, I think that I think it's going to become more and more important to realize the structures that need to be put in place. I mean, the Digital Media Copyright Act was what, from 1996? It was during President Clinton. That's the last time that there has been any type of legislation about copyright was
Mhm.
Yeah, and we've been teaching copyright lately, and Daisy could, she's on the call too, that we said that this is going to change soon again because of AI and the implications to the law. It's going to happen for sure very soon. And I just posted in the chat the copyright statement from Canva, and it says that, there's no claim, but then the last bullet is that's what kills you. It's like,
That
please
mean you're
don't
the
just be,
owner.
you're the owner of the images, that you have exclusive rights to them. So it's, yeah. Yeah, I always go to those statements. That's the best thing to look at any of one of these generators. Yeah.
Yeah, and they actually have a good one. I think the first tenet of Canva's AI policy is what is it? Is it be kind, be a human? What does it say? It's I can't remember. But just like, use your common sense when you're using this content that's been generated from AI. Um, and I think that's the human element that has to be interjected when using these, because if we think back to Wikipedia, when Wikipedia was first came on the scene, people were very worried about it. Students plagiarizing and copyright infringement, but we learned to work with it. Always, it's a good place to start research but not injure research. So I think AI is very similar in that, like, it's a good place to start, but then, you do want to make sure that the information is correct. You do want to, just like when you're searching on the web, you want to be critical of the content. So I know that it's an AI problem, but it's also a larger problem of the internet, unfortunately. Yes, it's true. Wikipedia has become just another tool in our toolbox that we were so worried about in the beginning. But I think that, just like this AI, we're all going to be jumping on the bandwagon and having to live with it and find ways to mitigate the issues. I know that AI literacy is another important component that we didn't really touch on. But it is something in the LibGuide, of how we interact with AI for students, by demystifying AI tools, showing them exactly how they work, showing them what type of information can be generated with AI, using them. I know that WAC has really harped on this, like using it as part of the process of writing, and then that will then in turn show students that that it can be a useful tool, but it's not your end final product. It can help you along that research journey or that writing journey, as one of the many tools that we have in our toolbox. Because things like Grammarly are something that we all use and don't even think about. I think that's going to kind of what happens with AI tools, where it'll just be another tool in our toolbox that we want to use safely.
All right, so it is noon.
Oh,
Thank you so
that's
very
interesting.
much
Yeah, I
for
signed up. When
joining
are
us.
you going to release about the new? I like all of the cat whack workshops.
I put a link in the chat. We have one coming up next week. So if anybody wants to sign up, you can. It would dovetails nicely with this one.
All right, thank you all for joining us. Yes, thank you for such a great active chat. It was really fun to just follow along and to have this discussion. I just popped our LibGuide, our big meta LibGuide link again in the chat if you wanted to check that out, see some of the other resources that we posted, some of the things that we said that we were going to talk about that we may not have talked about are all in there. Send us an email. We're all available to continue the discussion, and I'm looking forward to joining the WAC workshop. That's next week, I believe. So ciao, everybody. See ya.